Welcome back to the Mindful Life Lounge. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of psychology. We're going to explore 15 powerful psychology tricks that can work on anyone. These tricks are based on well-researched principles of human behavior and can be incredibly effective in various situations. Let's get started. Trick number 1, the foot in the door technique. First up, we have the foot in the door technique. This involves starting with a small request to increase the likelihood of agreement to a larger request later. Imagine you need a big favor from a friend. Instead of asking for the big favor right away, you start by asking for something small. Once they've agreed to the small favor, they're more likely to say yes to the bigger one. This technique works because of a concept known as commitment and consistency. When someone agrees to a small request, they see themselves as helpful and cooperative. To stay consistent with this self-perception, they are more likely to agree to a larger request. Use this technique when you need to build up to a larger request. Start with something easy and non-threatening to get the initial yes. For example, if you need help moving, ask the person if they can help you pack a few boxes first. Once they agree, they're more likely to help with the entire move. Trick number 2, the door in the face technique. Next, we have the door in the face technique. This one's pretty interesting. You start with a large request that is likely to be refused, followed by a smaller, more reasonable request. For instance, if you ask someone for a large loan and they refuse, they might be more willing to lend you a smaller amount. This technique relies on the principle of reciprocal concessions. When you make a large request that is refused, the other person feels a sense of guilt or obligation. When you follow up with a smaller request, they are more likely to agree because it seems like a compromise. Use this technique when your primary goal is the smaller request. For example, if you need an extra day to complete a project, ask for a week first. When this is denied, the smaller request of one day seems more reasonable and is likely to be granted. Trick number 3, mirroring. Mirroring is all about subtly mimicking the body language, speech patterns, and behaviors of the person you're interacting with. If they lean forward, you lean forward. If they use certain phrases, you use similar phrases. This creates a sense of rapport and makes the other person feel more comfortable and understood. Mirroring is effective because of a concept called social mirroring or mimicry, which is a natural human behavior. It helps build a connection and establishes trust because it signals that you are in sync with the other person. Be subtle and natural in your approach to mirroring. Overdoing it can come across as insincere or creepy. Pay attention to the person's body language, tone of voice, and pace of speech, and reflect these back in a way that feels genuine. Trick number 4, the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon is when you start noticing something everywhere after it's been brought to your attention. Mention a new word or topic in conversation, and the person will start to see it in various places. This phenomenon occurs due to a combination of selective attention and confirmation bias. Once something is brought to your attention, your brain starts noticing it more often, and you begin to see it everywhere. Use this trick to pique someone's interest in a new idea or concept. Introduce it casually in conversation, and their brain will start to notice it more frequently, making them more open to discussing it further. Trick number 5, the Zeigarnik effect. The Zeigarnik effect is the tendency to remember incomplete tasks better than completed ones. This is why cliffhangers in storytelling keep us so engaged. If you leave a task or a story unfinished, it stays in the mind, prompting the person to want to resolve it. This effect happens because our minds have a natural desire for closure. Incomplete tasks or stories create a sense of cognitive tension, which keeps them fresh in our memory until they are resolved. Use this trick to keep people engaged and interested. In presentations or conversations, leave certain points open-ended and encourage the person to think about them. This will keep them mentally engaged and more likely to follow up. Trick number 6, using people's names. Addressing someone by their name during a conversation creates a sense of importance and attention. For example, saying "Great idea, Sarah," instead of just "Great idea," makes the interaction more personal and engaging. Hearing our own name activates our brain more than any other word. It creates a sense of personal connection and makes us feel recognized and valued. Use people's names sparingly and naturally in conversation. It's especially effective when you want to grab someone's attention or make them feel important. However, overusing it can feel manipulative, so be mindful of the balance. Trick number 7, Compliment sandwich. Delivering criticism or feedback sandwiched between two positive comments is known as the compliment sandwich. For instance, you did a great job on the report. There are a few minor errors to fix, but overall, it's very well done. This technique softens the impact of criticism and makes it more likely to be received positively. This method works because it reduces the defensive reaction to criticism. Starting and ending with positive feedback makes the person more receptive to the critical points in the middle. Be genuine with your compliments and constructive with your criticism. Ensure that the compliments are specific and meaningful, and the criticism is framed as an opportunity for improvement rather than a fault. Trick number 8, the Ben Franklin effect. The Ben Franklin effect suggests that people are more likely to do you another favor after they've already done you a small favor. It might seem counterintuitive, but it works because doing a favor creates a sense of goodwill. This effect is based on cognitive dissonance theory. When someone does you a favor, they justify their action by thinking they must like you, leading them to be more willing to help you again in the future. Start with small, reasonable requests that are easy for the person to fulfill. As they comply, their perception of you becomes more positive, making them more likely to agree to future favors. Trick number 9, reciprocity. People feel obligated to return favors and kindness. This is the principle of reciprocity. If you do something nice for someone, they're more likely to return the favor. Reciprocity is a fundamental social norm where we feel the need to give back when we receive something. It helps build social bonds and trust within relationships. Offer genuine kindness and assistance without expecting anything in return. This creates a positive social dynamic where people feel naturally inclined to reciprocate your goodwill. Trick number 10, the power of silence. After asking a question or making a request, staying silent can prompt the other person to fill the gap and potentially agree. During negotiations, for example, state your terms and then remain silent. Silence creates psychological discomfort, prompting the other person to speak to fill the gap. This can lead to them revealing more information or agreeing to your request to break the silence. Use silence strategically in conversations, especially in negotiations or when seeking important information. After making your point or request, resist the urge to fill the silence and wait for the other person to respond. Trick number 11, social proof. People tend to follow the actions and beliefs of others, especially in uncertain situations. Highlight how many people are already using or supporting a product or idea to create social proof. Social proof leverages the human tendency to look to others for cues on how to behave. This is especially powerful in situations of uncertainty or when making decisions. Provide examples, testimonials, or statistics showing that others have successfully used or benefited from what you are promoting. This can help build trust and influence decision-making. Trick number 12, anchoring. Anchoring is when people rely heavily on the first piece of information they receive. In negotiations, starting with a high initial offer sets a favorable anchor point. The initial information, the anchor, serves as a reference point that influences subsequent judgments and decisions. Even if the final agreement is lower, it's often still closer to the anchor than it would have been otherwise. Set a high anchor when negotiating or presenting options. This makes other options or counteroffers seem more reasonable by comparison. Be prepared to adjust, but know that the initial anchor will heavily influence the outcome. Trick number 13, priming. Priming involves exposing someone to certain stimuli to influence subsequent behavior or thoughts. For example, use positive words and images before a presentation to create a favorable mindset in the audience. Priming works by activating related concepts in the brain, which can influence attitudes, perceptions, and behaviors without the person being consciously aware of it. Carefully choose words, images, and settings that align with the response you want to elicit. For example, in a sales context, priming with success stories and positive testimonials can create a more favorable attitude toward the product. Trick number 14, scarcity principle. People value things more when they perceive them as scarce or limited. Highlight the limited availability of a product or a time-sensitive offer to create a sense of urgency. The scarcity principle taps into the fear of missing out, FOMO. When something is perceived as rare or in short supply, it becomes more desirable and valuable. Use scarcity genuinely and ethically. For example, if you have a limited time offer or limited stock, highlight this to encourage quick decisions. However, Avoid false scarcity as it can damage trust if discovered. Trick number 15, framing effect. The way information is presented affects decision-making and perception. Describe a product as 95% effective rather than 5% failure rate to create a positive impression. The framing effect shows that people react differently to information depending on how it is presented. Positive framing tends to be more persuasive and acceptable than negative framing. Frame information in a way that highlights the positive aspects. Whether you are presenting data, making a proposal, or giving feedback, consider how the framing can impact perception and decision-making. And there you have it, 15 psychology tricks that can work on anyone. Understanding these principles can help you navigate social interactions more effectively and build better relationships. Remember, the key is to use these tricks ethically and with good intentions. Thank you for joining us on the Mindful Life Lounge. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more insightful content. Until next time, stay mindful and keep learning.